Charmed is a prime-time television series about sister witches that struck lightning in a bottle not once, but twice. For a show that's themed around sisterly bonds, it's amazing that the writers were able to replace one sister with another, and it felt completely organic to the story. Shannen Doherty, the actress who played Prue, had to leave at the end of season 3, making room for Paige to enter at the start of season 4. With drama going on behind the scenes, who knows how much or how little time the writers had to prepare for this change. When the audience first discovers that Prue's dead, it's jarring, but mostly because you'd never expect that to happen to a main character, especially a character who's cheated death so many times in the past. Upon closer inspection, however, you can see that the writers had been leaving breadcrumbs all along. If you'd like a video on these breadcrumbs and the tragic story that is Prue Halliwell, comment down below to let me know. The writers did such a great job that when Patty says,
losing Prue, learning about another sister, this is your path. It's your destiny.
you can almost picture what Charmed could have been if all 4 women were able to be on screen at the same time. In this video, I'm going to discuss a theory about how Paige almost met her Charmed sisters. Remember that really funny episode where they cast the lost item spell and everything started coming back to the manor? There were pencils everywhere, there was a random dog, and Phoebe's hair went from brown to blonde very suddenly. Well, that episode is a lot dumber than you remember. It was actually about wrestling and a demon academy, and the only thing of importance that really happened in that entire episode was that Prue found out that Phoebe didn't really vanquish Cole, and that he was alive and out there somewhere just hanging out. Even though many people might disregard this episode as simply a filler episode, I argue that this episode shows a pivotal point in the Charmed One's overall destiny. If powerful witches, especially the most powerful witches of all time, cast a lost spell, doesn't it seem like their long-lost baby sister would be one of those people who was revealed to them? Especially in a show that deals so heavily with blood magic.
Let blood return to me.
Editing room Ash here, I'm looking over the clips I took for this video, and I find it so interesting that both episode spells got started with a newspaper. For the lost spell, a mysterious newspaper with no images appears in the afternoon to help them with their innocent. For the lost witch spell later on, a newspaper materializes in front of Paige. It's the obituaries letting her know that Prue is dead. I think something similar happened to Paige during the original lost spell that sent her to Halliwell Manor. Within the timeline of this show, Paige would have had plenty of time to stop by the house. The sisters left immediately after reading the newspaper, which resulted from the lost spell. They went to save the demon, and they stayed long enough to capture him, and then came back home. Remember, at this part in the show, people drove. They weren't orbiting all over the place. They had to drive from A to B. After abducting the demon, they tied him up in the basement and left him up there while shenanigans ensued. But ultimately, they let him go so that Prue could follow him back to the big bad of the episode. So while the girls are out of the house this time, not only do they have their wrestling match, they also send a few demons to hell, have to save Piper's life, and pick up the mother of the demon in order to bring her back to the house. When they get back to the manor, it's clearly dark. They've spent most of their day out of the house since they cast the lost spell. Even though this isn't everybody's favorite thought process, I like to think that destiny had closely intertwined all 4 sisters, and that they had nearly crossed paths, possibly many times before. This was just an idea that I like to think over, and it's especially fun in this particular episode. So I'm sure you can imagine my excitement when I saw episode 1 of season 4, when Paige offers up some of her backstory, which seems to align perfectly with this theory.
Should have been coming to P3 for the last year or so on and off. I mean, ever since that.
Ever since what, Paige? Since you got a magical clue that directed you to the Halliwell sisters?
So my sad story is that I'm adopted. Only it's not so sad because I loved my parents. God rest. So after they died, I went searching for my birth mother, hoping to get some answers. I went to the police station, found the church where I was done with that. I checked around. I figured she must have lived near there, you know? I even thought I might have been related to the Halliwell sisters for a minute, but their mom died a long time ago, so I gave up on that. Related to the Halliwell sisters for a minute, but...
Related to the Halliwell sisters for a minute, but...
The story of Paige's self-discovery after her parents' death is extremely condensed, I think for easier storytelling on the writer's half, so that they would have more flexibility for Paige's story later on. Remember, Paige was a teenager back in the 90s, and back then information wasn't as readily available. It seems unlikely to me that Sam or Patty would leave behind much evidence that they were the parents. They left behind so little evidence that even the elders didn't know about their relationship or Paige. They left the baby at a different church than they frequented. The nun knew nothing about the origins of the baby. She told Paige everything she knew in her first episode. It might have been easier for Paige to find information once she got settled into her social work career, but before that I feel like she hit a pretty severe dead end, because if she would have questioned anything about the Halliwell sisters within the last 3 years, it would have come across Andy and Daryl. When asked if Paige had ever reached out to find the Halliwell sisters, who she thought were her sisters, Paige said no, but she looked really embarrassed when she did so. And let's not forget that Paige certainly knew where the manor was, because she just walked on in her first episode. It really makes you wonder, what clue could have driven Paige to seek out the Halliwell family, and seemed like undeniable proof during a lost and found spell? A clue that was undeniable to her in the moment, but seemed silly enough that she wouldn't seek out the police, and would never act upon it again once the spell had faded. But that is a theory for another day. It's fun to think about what could have been in the overarching charm destiny. How close Paige might have come to meeting her sisters on that day is unclear. Was she just a few minutes or a few hours too late or too early? What would have happened if that knock at the door would have been their long-lost baby sister? What adventures would they have gotten into, the charmed ones, and their half-witch, half-white lighter sister?